In this lesson, we're going to add blurs to key areas to remove the CG look, as well as fix some small areas of our keyer that are giving us some noise problems. So let's begin by taking a look at those areas that our keyer are not fully solving. And this may or may not appear in your composition. This is solely dependent on how you created your keyer mask. So I'm just going to hit the B key to crop off my playback range, and then hit the 0 key to take a look at a RAM preview. So you'll notice down here in the bottom left corner, we've got a lot of noise appearing above her shoulder. And usually when you see this type of noise, it's from some sort of keyer. So what we need to do is we need to take a look at our picture frame here, which has our key light effect on it. So to see this, let's just view it, and we can pretty immediately see where the problem is. Now, funnily enough, the problem is also very easy to solve. We just need to come in and modify our mask. So let's grab the bottom left corner of this mask, pull it all the way down to the left, and the top right, or the top left, all the way to the top left. We could also probably pull this left-hand mask to the right a little bit, especially in this area right here, but for that, I want to make sure to set it on the right key. So let's just move that closer to the hand, and let's see if we introduce any problems here, and it looks just fine. Now this happened because, again, we're using a keyer, and the green essentially piece of cardboard on the background is not a very good chroma key solution, and we are chroma keying off of this hand. So sometimes these little things are invisible until the very end of the composition, when we start to really look down at what is going wrong in this scene. Okay, so it looked like fixing that mask solved that issue. So now let's just talk about CG and blurring. Now, there's a lot of very sharp lines inside of this composition, and sharp lines are the enemy of a well-integrated CG production, because the computer can create pixel-perfect lines, as we can see here on this reflection. However, in the real world, no matter how good of a camera you have, nature is going to blur things. That's just what nature essentially does. So it's impossible to capture the pixel-perfect detail we get with a CG render. So our responsibility is to add in some blurs to very subtly break up these lines and reintroduce a little bit of that real world blurriness. So let's begin by blurring this reflection line right here. Now we have to figure out what composition or what layer is actually part of that. So it's inside of our 3D elements layer, and this is coming actually from our reflection matte here. So let's select our reflection matte, and let's just give this a fast blur. There's a lot of different blurs, but I usually find myself going back to the fast blur because, well, it's fast and it gets the job done. Let's just give this a subtle blur, so no need to go crazy with it, but let's just break up this line a little bit. I'd say between 2 and 4 would be a good value for this. Let's say about 3. And we still have a semi-sharp line there. We haven't destroyed the composition at all. But what we've done is we've introduced just a slight blur so that it looks less strange and less out of place. Now we also need to give a slight blur to this 3D elements here as well. Now this is containing everything inside of our scene. So again, let's drop on a fast blur. Now you might be asking, why did we do all that work creating a render if we're just going to blur it out and make it look terrible? Well, the thing is, we're not trying to give it a heavy blur or even a noticeable blur. What we want to do is we want to give it a blur to match our background. Now this may be as heavy as a 0.1 blur, but it may be something as small as 0.5. Let's take a look at this effect. So let's turn it off and on. And it might be incredibly difficult to see in the compressed video that you're watching right now, but on my screen it is definitely visible. You can see this in the lines and the entire composition. So this is essentially just softening our CG just a little bit, not so much that it breaks everything, but enough so that we no longer have the excessive sharpness that comes with a CG render. Now let's also copy this fast blur and paste it onto our reflection here, because our reflection was getting rather sharp on the top and the bottom, and we can even give this even maybe slightly a heavier blur, maybe even all the way to 1, because the background really isn't as important as our foreground here. So again, adding a very slight, very subtle blur will really help sell your CG elements, because again, the computer is just far too good at its job, and we need to kind of make it work a little less good and sort of muddy up our compositions to create a more lifelike integration. So that brings us to the end of this course of object match moving in Match Mover, Maya, and After Effects. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this course, and if you have any questions, feel free to jump on our forums where we are active participants and we have hundreds of helpful members. So I can't wait to see how you use these techniques in your own projects, and thank you for watching.